It's an old building with engineers and to develop that whole project. So usually as that whale is sitting somewhere, it's leaching oils. And those oils need to be cleaned off. And so the key is...
How long does it leach oil for?
It could leach oil forever if you don't evacuate the oil. So the degreasings, after the cleaning process, which is really the removal of the residual flesh, there's a degreasing process. And there are a couple different methods to do it, but the one that I favor is trying the animal in a detergent solution. And so I use like an outdoor wood boiler, which heats a coil in very large tanks. And so if you think about the skull, which might be 16 feet long and 8 feet wide, I have a cauldron that I've fabricated out of old oil tanks that can fit a sperm whale skull. But it takes 2 or 3 days to get the water up to temperature from your wood boiler. So you're talking about a large volume of water, and I'm using wood because it's convenient here in the state of Maine. I can do that pretty accessibly. So it's a matter of how many of the bones can you do at once in your tank and how fast can you move them through, but we expect that process. I would probably plan on 2 or 3 months of actual degreasing step, but there's a lot, there's something going on while the animal is just sitting. If it's in the sunlight, natural UV will help to evacuate some of that grease. The UV nicks the bonds, and there's a sort of a leaching that happens. We can accelerate that process by using the hot detergent water. But ultimately, even if the thing sits in a barn 5 years waiting for the next step, it's not like nothing is going on. That oil is leaching out, and what you really want to be careful and be sure that you've done is you've gotten all the oil out of it before it ends up in a museum, particularly if it's a museum with important tapestry collections, or but you don't want an odoriferous thing, which is just musty. And there are some good examples and some bad examples around. And I've done work for the New Bedford Whaling Museum, but I did not put their blue whale together, and they're renowned for their oily blue whale, which in fact drips. And on a daily basis, the custodial staff takes a paint roller and rolls to try to mop up the drips before they end up down onto the floor. And so they can leach oil for a long time if they're not degreased properly. And part of that is a time. You need to allow gravity and to help that oil leach out of there.
How much does a 50-foot sperm skeleton weigh?
I did one that was 48.5 feet for the Nantucket Whaling Museum, and we had that one clocked at 4,200 pounds. And so if I was to say off of the back of an envelope, obviously it would be weighed very precisely, for engineering constraints. But we would, if an architect was, saying how much, I would say 5,000 pounds, and obviously you start factoring, they factor the engineering up from there, but it'd be something less than that, but I would say from 3,500 to 5,000 would be a range, as if I was just shooting from the hip.
So you can't just hang this up in Gates Center?
No, not this one would be too large for the Gates Center.
Yeah.
But this animal is interesting to the ally. I mean, there's a lot of scientific reason and rarity, and it's an iconic species, and so there's a lot of good reasons to do this with this specimen. But there is the hope upon this, the staff of Allied Whale, that this might be a good impetus for revisiting that Bar Harbor Whale Museum issue. Very lucky to have worked with the Walsh and Ocean Properties, who let us have a museum there for 8 years and helped us to foster that. They were really partners in that.
They own this property, right?
They own this property. This would be a great place for a museum, wouldn't it? They may have other plans. I don't know what they're doing here.
Right.
But, obviously there's some attention when you do something like this. Some of it can be good and some of it can be bad. There are some neighbors that are not too happy about the smell. It's a temporary sort of a thing. And it's not that bad, really. There could be good things that come of it too, which is that it puts it back on a front burner, so to speak, and so we're hoping that we might see some of that effect as well.